Moments live forever, but stats never die. While in most cases, stats can be used to help paint the picture of the greatest moments in the NFL, the statistics on this list just don't make any sense. Here are the weirdest stat lines in NFL history. Jerome Bettis rushes for 1 yard and 3 touchdowns. How does one get completely stuffed while being completely unstoppable in the same game? Well, you'll have to ask the bus. Against the Raiders in 2004, Jerome Bettis took the worst statistical performance of his career and made it into an unforgettable day. Bettis opened the game up with a run for a 2-yard loss and was then stifled for a 0-yard gain on his next attempt. He didn't let that break his spirit, though. His next 3 carries came on the goal line, and he made the most of it, scoring 3 straight touchdowns. So, in 5 carries, he had 1 total yard and 3 TDs. His worst yardage performance came in the same game that he tied his career-high touchdowns in a game. With Deuce Staley as the starter, Bettis came in and did his job with precision. The 3 scores were all of Pittsburgh's touchdowns on the day, as they went on to win 24-21. The bus's route was short, but he definitely hit every stop. Randy Moss scores 3 touchdowns on 3 receptions. This insane stat line is one of the most iconic moments in football history. The Cowboys passed on Randy Moss in the 1998 draft, and it only took 3 catches, just 3, on Thanksgiving Day for him to make them pay. In front of the entire football world, Moss blew past the defense for a 51-yard bomb on the Vikings' opening drive. The second catch is what we could only call getting mossed, as Randy jumped over a Cowboys defender for another TD. For the hat trick, Moss caught a 5-yard hitch route before turning upfield and streaking down the sideline, scoring a 3rd time. Like calling off the dogs, Moss was done for the night. In the Vikes' big win, Randy Moss had just 3 grabs for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's the baseball equivalent of hitting for the cycle. The iconic game will probably never be replicated, much like Randy Moss himself can never be replicated. Texans defeat the Steelers despite being outgained 422-47. Our next stat shows just how important the turnover battle is. The Pittsburgh Steelers had 422 yards of offense, quarterback Tommy Maddox with over 300 through the air, while the expansion Texans did absolutely nothing on offense, mustering just 3 first downs and a total of 47 yards. Yet, the Houston Texans won the game. The defense wasn't waiting on David Carr to score, they did it themselves. 3 times, in fact, the first defensive scores of their team's history. Aaron Glenn caught 2 picks and housed them both for more interception return yards than the offensive yards Houston would produce the whole day. The Steelers were called for more penalty yards than the Texans' offense put on them. Houston's 5 forced turnovers were enough to overcome the abysmal offense. No team has ever produced less offensive yards and won a game in the 100-year history of the NFL than Houston. What's even crazier is it was kind of a blowout, 24-6. Seahawks win with just 13 passing yards. Imagine your team's quarterback going 4 for 16 and only 13 yards. You just got demolished, right? Not the Seahawks. In 1983, the Seahawks beat the Raiders 38-36. Their score nearly tripled their passing yards on the day. Not only could Jim Zorn not get anything going against LA, they basically stopped trying. They ran for 151 yards and 3 touchdowns. They added to that with great special teams play, a 75-yard punt return TD, and forced 8 turnovers. The Raiders had more passing yards in one play than Seattle would the entire game. Want to make the stat even crazier? When you add in an 11-yard sack, the Hawks compiled just 2 yards in the air and won. It wasn't as close as the score made it seem, as the Raiders scored in garbage time. In the modern NFL, that's something I can almost guarantee we will never see again. Tim Tebow wins, completing just 2 passes. Talk about a lack of passing. The Broncos went full single wing against the Chiefs in 2011. With Tim Tebow at the helm, Denver scrapped their entire playbook and opted for a running game that featured 3 yards and a cloud of dust. When Willis McGahee went down, Tebow and Lance Ball shouldered the load. They opened the game with 8 straight runs and kept it rolling. Behind a great defense, it didn't matter that Tebow did not complete a single pass in the first half. In fact, Tebow went into the 4th quarter with just 1 completion. While it was boring to watch as they played 1920s football, it would only take 1 more completion to seal the game. Eric Decker blew past the secondary and Tebow dropped a bomb for a 56-yard touchdown. Final line, 2 of 8, 69 yards and a TD, but a win. Most importantly, a 17-10 win. Glenn Milburn has 404 yards with no touchdowns. Glenn Milburn is the single-game all-purpose yardage leader. But that's not a weird stat. In that same game, he set the record for the most yards without a touchdown in a game, 404 yards, a record that no one even got close to. Yet, Glenn Milburn couldn't find the end zone on December 10, 1995. How? Well, Glenn Milburn was a kick return specialist for the Denver Broncos. Because they either allowed a touchdown or forced a punt, Milburn would get 10 different chances to return a punt or kick. Then he got the hot hand as the main ball carrier for Denver, rushing for another 131 yards. And as explosive as he was, his versatility led to 5 receptions for another 45 yards, 404 yards total. Only player ever to get over 400 yards. The problem with the Glenn Milburn show? He couldn't find the end zone. So, the all-time yardage record was achieved in a loss. Mike Vrabel has 12 receptions for 12 touchdowns. As Snoop Dogg so eloquently said, he don't miss. In the heat of battle, he don't miss. Mike Vrabel had a long, storied career. As the linebacker for the New England Patriots, Vrabel was the brains behind some of New England's best defenses during their first dynasty run. But what he's best known for is his immaculate record as a pass catcher. Vrabel caught 12 passes in his career and scored a touchdown on all 12, and some came in epic moments. In his first Super Bowl, Vrabel slipped out of the backfield uncovered, and Brady dotted him over the middle for the championship sealing score. The snag made him the first defensive player to score an offensive touchdown in a Super Bowl in almost 2 decades. His second catch put him in Super Bowl lore forever, and it wasn't so easy. Against the Eagles, he cut back to the pylon as he was mugged by a defender. Brady threw it up, and Vrabel had to pop it up into the air back to himself for the TD grab. Vrabel became one of just 17 players in history to catch 2 Super Bowl TD passes. Mike Vrabel is an ATM, automatic touchdown machine. Chargers have the #1 ranked offense and defense and missed the playoffs. One of the most statistically dominant teams ever couldn't make the playoffs. In 2010, the San Diego Chargers had the #1 ranked offense and the #1 ranked defense. Phillip Rivers led an explosive offense, throwing to Antonio Gates and utilizing the 3-headed monster backfield of Darren Sproles, Mike Tolbert, and Ryan Matthews. While Ron Rivera, Chargers DC at the time, coordinated a star-studded unit on the other side of the ball. So, how did they not make the playoffs? As historic as they were on offense and defense, they were just as comically horrible on special teams. In their 3-game slide that put them at 2-5, special teams was problem 1, 2, and 3 for the Bolts. The Seahawks scored a walk-off kickoff touchdown. They had a punt blocked against the Raiders, that was the deciding score. And against the Patriots, a false start wiped out a game-tying field goal. They missed the second attempt. Despite a 7-2 finish to the season, they missed the playoffs. Point your finger right at the 2010 Chargers when people say special teams isn't important. Hank Bauer rushes for 28 yards and 8 TDs. Hank the Howitzer was brought in for one job, finishing drives off with touchdowns, and he did that at an incredible clip. Hank Bauer was a Swiss Army knife for the Chargers. He's arguably the greatest special teams player of all time, but he made his bread as a short yardage back. In 1979, he put together the most efficient running back season ever seen. He ran the ball just 18 times for 28 yards, a putrid 1.5 yards a carry, but 8 of them went for touchdowns. 8. And 9 went for first downs. That means every time Hank Bauer stepped on the field on 4th and goal or 3rd and short, everyone in the arena knew he was getting the ball, and he still converted. 17 out of 18 times he converted. He scored a touchdown every 3 carries. Hank Bauer's 1979 season coined the phrase short yardage specialist. And if there was a place on the All-Pro team for short yardage backs, Bauer would have been their first teamer. Even great bruising backs like Mike Alstott and Brandon Jacobs can't compare to Hank Bauer's 1979 season. Chiefs complete a season with no wide receiver touchdowns. While head coach Andy Reid has had plenty of offenses to be proud of over his illustrious career, the 2014 Chiefs was not one of them. The receiving corps wasn't great, headlined by a 30-year-old Dwayne Bowe. But to be completely kept out of the end zone for an entire season? That makes no sense. Only 3 teams have ever finished a season without a receiver touchdown, and the last time it was done was in 1964. That's back when quarterbacks could still be pummeled, and DBs legally assaulted receivers at the line of scrimmage. The Chiefs' lack of, anything from the receiver position made them miss the playoffs. They did have 18 passing touchdowns on the year, all caught by tight ends and running backs. Rest assured, Chiefs Kingdom, with Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill in town, the days of no receiver touchdowns are far behind you.